We found each other through the normal means, really. I was aware of Morgan's work and I loved it. Not only Will You Be My Neighbor, but many other ones. But also he did a documentary on an art movement in California in the 60s that I was around for, called The Cool School. And it featured a friend of mine, Irving Blum. He's over 90 now, but he gave Andy Warhol the very first show in Los Angeles, his very first show, as a matter of fact. And so I had an appreciation, and then I guess you contacted me somehow.
Yeah, I got word that Steve was maybe willing to do a documentary, and I immediately came to New York and wanted to sit down with you.
People ask me, so why did you do a documentary? I said, well, if not now, when? You know?
It was right coming out of COVID too. Like, I don't know, everybody was like sitting at home wondering about things. I didn't know if that changed your thinking at all.
Well, I had begun cleaning out my memorabilia. You know, I had sold some things at auction to benefit the motion picture home. You know, I had clothes from movies and things like that, and it's things, frankly, I just didn't want to leave for my wife to deal with at some point, you know. So I thought, I'll do the escorting out of some of this stuff. So this is also a way to summarize a life that I, in a way that I couldn't. It would take someone else to do it. Well, you know, archival material is everywhere. When I wrote a memoir, an autobiographical memoir, and so much information came from people I contacted, and they remembered things. I went, oh yeah. So not only is archival material in your house, it's also in the minds of other people.
I'll say, as a documentarian, Steve saved so much great stuff. So the fact that he had his spiral notebooks from when he was 16 years old, you know, things like that with his homework assignments sometimes, you know, your philosophy notebooks from UCLA, things like that. Yeah. You know, it was a trove of Steve's whole life.
I noticed there's some misspellings in the movie. Weird, I spelled W-I-E-R-D.
I did notice that.
Yeah, but, you know, you get a pass, except I was in college.
The thing I remember about meeting Steve for the first time was you invited me over for lunch at your house, and you wrote to me and said, would salad be all right? And I said, yeah, salad would be great. Then you wrote to me again and said, would you mind salmon on the salad? And I thought that would be great. And I thought, surely Steve has somebody else to write to me to ask me about lunch. But that actually was very indicative of who Steve is, which is,
I find it's harder to delegate than just do it yourself, so, you know.
So the first meeting, we ended up talking about art and all kinds of other things, not even that much about the film. And I remember at the end of that meeting, you kind of saying, well, let's do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been a fan of Steve since I was a kid and started memorizing his albums. But I would say the deeper reason is that Steve has had the kind of career that touches so many different things I like. So I love the comedy, I love the film, I love the stand-up, but I love art and theater and novels, and that fact that your life goes in these very different directions is something that was really resonant with me.
There are always challenges to anything you do. You know, the challenge for me is, you know, documentary shows a lot of things about your life, and there's nothing I'm not proud of, but there's things I wish were better, you know, in just terms of quality and material, and so you do have to revisit your failures as well as your successes, just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a moment in the second film when were listening to cassettes of your old stand-up.
Yeah.
And you're so visibly uncomfortable doing that.
Yeah.
That, I'm sure there were many moments that made you squirm by kind of having to.
Yes, there is, because when you're doing a documentary, you want everything to be so good. Everybody go, wow, that was really good, and then you're listening to something is in process, or not good or not finished. And if I look back over my stand-up career, which is the first half, I could probably count 25 shows that I would go, yeah, that was really good, out of 1,000, but I'm not being self-critical. I'm just saying it's just the way it is.
It's part of the process. I think we actually learn more by our failures than our successes. And we spend a lot of time on things that are deemed failures, but I actually then respond to how Steve dealt with those things, which is working through them. His persistence, is incredible, and to me, something totally relatable.
Hard to answer. I mean, I want them, I guess, to like the documentary or like the work that's presented in the documentary. But the documentary is not obligated, and doesn't only show positive things. It shows things that are stepping stones, to something else that you're on your way to. So by definition, they're not as good as what you want ultimately, although there might be some things in there that are what I wanted ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I got an email from a young filmmaker who watched the documentaries yesterday and said, so much of this story was relatable to me, my creative journey. I think in that way, the surprising thing is, as much as it's about Steve, who's had this incredible career, there's a relatability to it. I think there are many lessons to be learned, from your journey. So that part was really surprising.
I mean, I've always liked the character of Roxanne, because of C.D. Bales, actually, because I was so busy, I was so focused on writing the script, and now it's like 2 days before shooting, and I realized I had never thought about how I was going to play it. And I think I just decided on upbeat. And sometimes that's all it takes to inform your character or your performance of it. So it's fun to play an upbeat character who wins.
There's so many great characters you've had throughout your career. I think maybe Bowfinger.
Yeah, I like that.
See.
But I had a great cast surrounding me. Eddie Murphy, and Christine Baranski, and so many people. Heather Graham. Yeah.
You weren't so bad, though.
Oh well. the joy of that movie was in the writing and working out the plot and making the plot tick like a clock, and working with Frank Oz, the director.
Yeah.